One of the most annoying things to happen at time of egg retrieval is to initially be excited that you got a bunch of eggs and then to be let down and find out that a bunch of them were immature. Egg maturity. Whether you're planning for an egg retrieval cycle for egg freezing or for the purpose of IVF to create embryos, it is so important. I want to talk about why it matters and what we can actually do if the maturity rate is lower than what we anticipate or hope for. So here's a fact that's often surprising to many people when they're going through an egg retrieval cycle for the first time, and it really shouldn't come as a surprise. Not every egg at retrieval is going to be something that we can use. Under the microscope, the embryologist can actually see the eggs at different stages of development. And this is about a process of genetic reorganization called meiosis. And this happens at different points in time when an egg is being matured and ovulating or being retrieved, and then eventually when it's being fertilized. As an egg or eggs are being stimulated and becoming mature, they're going through 3 different stages of development. The most immature stage is known as the GV stage or germinal vesicle. This is where the egg hasn't even begun to start reorganizing its chromosomal material. And then there's an intermediate stage known as metaphase 1, and this is where the egg has begun the process but hasn't quite completed it. And then the final and mature stage is known as metaphase 2 or M2. Only M2 eggs have the right amount of genetic material to be successfully fertilized. They've undergone that reorganization. These are the eggs that we want because they can be fertilized by sperm. They can also be more reliably frozen and thawed and used for IVF. Eggs at those immature stages tend to not survive freezing and thawing as well, which limits their use in later treatment. I always tell my patients, realistically, I don't think it's likely that all eggs that we get at the retrieval will be at the right stage of development and be mature. But if 70 to 90% are mature, I'm going to be really happy with that outcome, to the point where I would say, let's emulate that cycle and try to achieve that same yield of mature eggs in a subsequent cycle if you need to do this again. If the proportion that end up being mature is much lower, let's say 30 to 50%, that's more of a red flag. And that tells me that there may be room for improvement for us to tweak a strategy for the next cycle to try to improve maturity. A really common scenario is, for example, where someone has 12 follicles, visible in ultrasound growing, but only 7 eggs were actually retrieved, and they ask, do I have empty follicles? And I explain that not every follicle at time of retrieval is going to yield an egg. Often the ones that are really immature are harder to detach from the wall of the follicle and actually extract them during the time of the retrieval. And that's one of the major reasons why follicle count and the yield of eggs at retrieval may not match up. Stay tuned for part 2 of egg maturity, where I'm going to delve deep into the possible causes and therefore potential targets for what we can treat and try to troubleshoot to have a higher proportion of mature eggs at a subsequent retrieval. I'm going to walk you through how I counsel patients and the strategies that I will take in the approach to stimulating the ovaries to get a better yield of mature eggs. It's something you don't want to miss, so stay tuned for part 2.